Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Avorion episode 66. I'm Enigmius, and today doing something a little bit different, something that we haven't done in quite some time, and this time we're doing it on account of technical difficulties, lost footage, and other shenanigans. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. Suffice it to say, we've made some progress. We've made some good progress. We're actually very close to being structurally complete on the Chariot carrier. And now we're just going to kind of do a review of what I've done, take a look at where we're going, and we're going to do it real time instead of recording the footage and then doing the voiceover after, because this is a rare opportunity for me to be able to kind of interact with things and illustrate what we're talking about a little bit more directly. And then the next episode will be back to the standard build format to finish off the outer hull and progress with the build towards completion. So you can see the ship is definitely taking on a shape. And this is very, very similar to what I had originally had in mind in my brain for what I wanted the ship to look like. And it's coming together fairly nicely. It's taken a little while, particularly working on this back end here, getting it to the right shape so that everything looks the way that I originally had in mind. That took quite some time and a lot of fiddling around and a lot of trial and error until we finally got to a point where I can say that it's good. It's where I want it. And it's basically very, very close in profile to this piece that we cut and pasted from the front section and rescaled and attached. And that's kind of what I wanted, is I wanted this to kind of indicate roughly what the profile of the larger section would be. And sometimes it's a little bit difficult when you're talking about making a side profile out of curved shapes. Like you can see here when we get up close, it's not a flat sort of parallel kind of thing. It curves around this way, and if you're laying out those curves and you're creating those curves, sometimes the tendency, at least for me, is to let the curve kind of go where it wants to go and see where you end up. And that, in a lot of cases, wound up being a very time-consuming way to get it wrong. So in this case, specifically trying to get it to resemble an initial profile, I had to be a little bit more aggressive in the way that I was handling the curve and kind of forcing it around and doing everything that was supposed to be done the first time around. I'm very happy with the way that it's working out now. We were able to finish off this under piece here, this structural piece, basically carrying it from this section here back, just this little short section. But it had to line up with the curvature of this piece here. This is kind of a soft curve extending out, and then it flattens off, and it stays relatively flat as it moves back, but it does have a soft curve here that just kind of, it flows a little bit better than if I had just taken this and run it straight back. So another piece that I'm happy with the way that it worked out. And then also, figuring out what to do with this back end. So if we're looking at the side profile, we've got this shape here that was informed by this piece here that we attached to it. But I didn't necessarily want it to just kind of cut across flat. I wanted it to have this sort of profile here, if you're looking at it from the right angle, where it kind of comes around and there's a bit of a depression on the back side that extends to the underside and all the way around to the front side here. It just kind of gives it a little bit of extra depth, a little bit of extra texture to the overall look of things. We've got our thrusters here. I really do wish that they would give us thrusters on a slope. I think that would be pretty fantastic, but as it is, they're going to work. They're going to be okay. This is not going to be a rapid accelerating ship. I haven't got a full crew complement, so I can't say for sure exactly what the final thrust will be, but I can say that it's not going to accelerate quickly. In fact, looking at the numbers now, specifically, we've got almost double the braking thrust that we have compared to the actual thrust. So there's the possibility, before this is all said and done, to add a little bit of extra thrust in a couple of different places. It's not going to be a huge focus for me because, again, this is a carrier and it's not meant to be an extremely fast kind of ship doing, all kinds of high-speed maneuvering. However, as we'll see in a few minutes, in terms of the actual ability to change its heading, it's actually not too bad. It's for the size of ship that it is, it's not bad at all. We have full structural integrity field coverage, and whatever we add to finish off the ship will also be getting the benefit of that. It won't take much to extend the structural integrity field coverage for those additional sections that we have. We also have shields, but apparently our lack of crew means that they're not on, and that's fine because it's really just kind of a distracting sort of a thing when the shields keep pulsing. If you've seen the way that looks, it's I wouldn't say that it bothers me, but it does kind of distract when you're trying to look at something and the whole thing goes deliberately blurry for a couple of seconds every now and then. It's not necessarily the ideal way to show what's going on. So this back end took quite a while. We messed around with it. We eventually got the profile we were looking for. That gave us the opportunity to finish off this section here, so we get a pretty good idea of the final profile of the ship when it's all said and done. We still have the sides of these sections here and this section here to close in. I don't expect those will be a horribly difficult thing to do. I do expect that they're going to take a little bit of time because I don't want them to be just flat cutting down this way. If that's all I wanted to do, that would be a pretty simple and straightforward job, but I want it to be a little bit curved, kind of coming out like this. Maybe not that much, but you get the idea. A little bit of a curve here, and then also a little bit of a curve this way, just to kind of finish it off and keep going with the rest of the profiles on the ship. Pretty much everything on the ship has got some sort of a curve to it. Even this angular section is curved around the transitions from one direction to another, and then it curves back around. So there's a lot of curves, not necessarily the kind that we need to be thinking about doing really aggressive stuff here, but definitely something that we can be keeping in mind when we're filling these guys in. Those are the two remaining structural elements that we have to finish before we can say that the ship is structurally complete, and then we can move on to some of the detailing that we might want to do. So that's the key element there. I think we're going to have plenty of hard points for weapons. The hangar is looking to be in good shape. Realistically, if we get rid of those, we should see when the red goes away, if it goes away, that the hangar extends all the way through. There we go. So the hangar's in a good spot. It seems to be doing what we need it to be doing. I haven't seen any weird coloration indicating that it's not going to work, so hopefully, cross your fingers, it'll work this time. And then the other thing that I wanted to try and keep in mind, finishing it off, we've got the hangars, we've got the turrets, we've got the side pieces that we finish off structurally, is the cosmetic detailing. And I started doing a little bit of playing around with this just to kind of get a feel for it. This little thingy here was one example of that. We didn't have to add this. It doesn't serve a purpose other than simply being there. But having this specific piece here sitting there for this long, and every time I look at it, it encourages me to want to do more with this area here. Just to add a little bit of detail indicates to me that for my tastes, this is a successful element, and we're going to be kind of using that as a reference for some of the other things that we'll be adding. Another thing that I wanted to do that I haven't done a lot in the past was take advantage of some of the textures on some of these blocks to produce a lighting effect that indicates various decks. And this is an example of me taking a block, and we've got all of these slope blocks that are basically coming around here, creating a curve along the front edge in here. That's really all they are. And then in order to get these lit sections, I would take I don't even remember what I took. Crew quarters, very fitting for the decks. crew quarter blocks and have them extending a little bit out of the tops of the slopes. So we've got essentially, maybe I should just kind of focus in and get in here. You can sort of see a little bit better. It's the rectangular shape. I wish that thing would go away. There's like a square shape that sticks out and drops off at a 90-degree angle. But it's not really all that noticeable that it's a square sticking out. What you really see are the lights, and the lights kind of add a little bit of visual interest in here. The same method that I used to put these lights into a position where you could see them wouldn't work in this area up here because the slope was too steep, and having the block stick through meant that it would have to cover up more than a certain amount of the block. The hologram thing doesn't work. So we'll have to get in here and spend a little bit of extra time lining things up manually in order to have this sort of effect going all the way up on the inside here for the different lights indicating the different decks and stuff. But that's another example of something that didn't really take a whole lot, but when we get the blocks and the UI stuff out of the way and look at it, I think it looks pretty neat. Actually, we can get rid of this too. It's headed in the right direction of giving the ship the sense that there's something going on here, and it's not just a big solid hull and everyone lives in a tube and can never look outside of a window. So that's something that we'll be using also in various different sections of the ship just to add that visual interest. So we've got all kinds of opportunities to take things beyond the purely structural and expand them so that they kind of look a little bit more interesting. I did some light reading on how we could make sure that we can make our own fighters and populate the hangar with fighters, and we can have quite a lot of fighters if we could find the fighters production capacity, production for we can have 240 to almost 2,000 fighters and capacity of 557, blah, blah. And I believe that this is how fast we're able to make those fighters. The most that you can make at a time is 4. So we can take a look and see if we can get this production capacity down or different, better, I think. But the key is I want to be able to make sure that we have a full complement of fighters at all times in this ship, because there's nothing worse than having to take a ship like this out of service because it's useless without fighters, and it's going to take too long to build a meaningful number of fighters. And consequently, I've also ensured that we have the crew capacity, almost 5,000 crew capacity, so that we can carry around extra pilots if they're getting killed. The fighters are destroyed, the pilots are getting killed. We've got replacement pilots available to hop into the new fighters that we're producing and make use of them that way. So that's kind of a key detail as well. We have massive crew capacity in this particular ship. Now lastly, since we're here, if we exit build mode, we can sort of see what we're looking at. The actual maneuverability of the ship is not too bad. You can see we kind of look in a particular direction, and then we have to wait a little bit for the ship to catch up and basically point in the direction that we want it to point. But for all things that we would need this thing to be able to change direction quickly for, I think it's going to be perfectly okay. It's going to be the fighters that are going to be doing the maneuvering, and then it's going to be the ship just basically accelerating in a specific direction and then flipping around and braking in order to stop or slow down so that we can maneuver and go in the direction we want to go. The worst thing I think that this ship will do in terms of performance is heading in a particular direction and then trying to change direction while at speed. That's where I expect to find this ship will just be very, very unresponsive. And that's something that we'll have to keep in mind while we're kind of figuring out how to maneuver it and what we're going to do with it. We've filled the interior mostly with the space that we have allotted. There's a little bit of extra room to add things. I didn't want to make sure everything was jam-packed to the extent that we had no more room to add anything else, because that's where we get into frustration territory, when we realize we forgot something, or we decide that we want to tweak something so that it does a little bit better in a certain category. It's always nice to have a little bit of extra room in there so that we can tuck things in without having to do a lot of removal and messing around on a ship that's completely enclosed, which is sort of key. Already, it's not bad going into the interior of the ship, swiveling the viewpoint around so that you're in an area where you can actually work, but much more added to the inside, and it become very, very difficult to continue adding things without removing sections of the hull or hiding large sections. So I think we're in a good spot in terms of the equipment that we have and the space that we have left to do whatever we end up realizing that we still needed to do but haven't done yet. So that's the Chariot up to this point. Like I say, next episode we're going to be focusing on closing these sections here and then working on the cosmetic detailing doodads, and then we're going to get it properly crewed up. We're going to get it with a blueprint in one of the spots so that we can start producing fighters, and then we'll see where it ends up. Once we've got basically everything on board that we need, it's producing fighters, it's doing its thing, we're going to just leave it off to the side to look after itself, and we'll start on the next build for our fleet. So I hope you're looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that. If you want to be notified about the next and future episodes in this and other series, the easiest way to do that is to subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for social media are always in the information section below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.